Welcome to the Town of Richmond Water and Sewer Commission meeting, June 17th, 2024. Any public comments? Any deletions, additions, modifications to the agenda? Okay, moving right along. Approval of the minutes from June 3rd, 2024. Do I have a motion?
This is David, so moved.
All right, second.
So Bard, I'll second.
All right, thank you, Bard. Discussion? And there is no further discussion. I have a vote on approving the minutes from June 3rd.
Jay, aye. Bard, aye.
David, I.
Morgan, aye. Motion pass. Purchase order. Purchase order number 22263.
Nope, sorry, 4899.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm already jumping ahead to the warrants. Right. This one right here, 4899. It's a payment towards to Wilmington Trust Bank for the water tank loan. Do I have a motion to approve?
This is David, so moved.
Is Bard, I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion?
Josh, when's this note going to get paid off? This is the gap loan, right? No, it isn't.
This is the full loan.
Never mind.
I think the gap loan is in 1 year.
One more to go.
I think we got
Wasn't
one
it
more.
last time that we had a,
I think it might still go into the next fiscal year,
right, but we did a payment for it.
Last
Right.
meeting,
but I
right?
think
Yeah.
the last payment on the gap loan might be next fiscal year. Whereas
Okay.
this one, I believe it still has several more years in front of it.
Oh, yeah, a lot of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, no further discussion, calling for a vote to approve purchase order
Did we have a motion?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, wake up, Jay.
4899.
Jay, aye. Bard, aye.
David, I.
Morgan, aye. Motion passed. Now, warrant, check warrant report number 22263 in the amount of $181,324.79. Do I have a motion to approve the warrant?
This is David, so moved.
This is Bard, I'll second that.
Okay, discussion. Okay. No further discussion, calling for a vote to approve the check warrant report 22263.
Jay, aye. Bard, aye.
David, I.
Morgan, aye. Warrant is passed. Sorry, where is that done? Right, and then that's just the invoices that back up the warrant. All right, I think we're finished with minutes and purchase orders and warrants. Moving along, items for presentation and discussion. First up, review of water tank with engineer Tyler Billingsley.
So we've got Tyler on the call here.
Hey guys,
Tyler-
can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, actually loud and clear. So Tyler has reviewed the tank from the outside as well as photos and videos of the tank from the inside when it was cleaned. He's selected a few screenshots as well as some video to review with the commission this evening. At this point, I'll turn it over to Tyler.
Sure. As Josh said, we did kind of a quick look at it, and I told Josh and Steve this. I'm definitely. It's kind of a structural design work for water tanks perched up on a hill, or kind of a specialty discipline. I'm not that disciplined, so I'm kind of taking a quick review at it just as a gut check, if you want to call it that. Obviously, the cracks from the outside are most apparent because you can drive by it, and the cracks are kind of leaching out effervescence of white, which is on a green background, so it really kind of jumps off the page at you a bit more. My gut reaction is that it is for being a really young tank, it is showing more cracking than it probably should given its age. all concrete cracks, but having several leaks and kind of being trapped behind the exterior coating along with some of the interior cracks, they're not going to fix themselves, especially with a freeze thaw climate. That water will seep into those cracks, it'll freeze, it'll thaw, those cracks will continue to grow. So like any problem, the sooner you fix it, the better off you'll be, versus kind of just kicking the can down the road and having a big problem, in 5 years or 10 years. It doesn't seem like it's not a catastrophic, it's going to blow apart tomorrow kind of thing, but it is kind of an early maintenance thing that, probably should be addressed, sooner rather than later, not now or this year, but, I think having someone who specializes in this kind of thing review it. And maybe they look at it and say, oh, it's fine, it's a small crack, just a quick seal is fine. But I know enough that I don't know enough to do a thorough review on a tank like this. You don't see a lot of cast in place rectangular tanks perched on a hill like this in Vermont, especially these days. A lot of them now are precast or precast and kind of post tension with wire to kind of seal them better, or some kind of glass fused to steel tank. This style tank was more common in the, I don't know, maybe the 60s, 70s, and 80s. You see a lot of them around, but not perched on a hill quite like that. So does that make sense so far, guys?
Yes.
Tyler, two quick questions. How concerned should we be that the rebar contained within the concrete is bare steel and not epoxy coated? Is there a risk of that oxidizing and swelling and causing the concrete to crack?
It's not a huge risk. I mean, epoxy coated would have probably been nice, but hindsight being 2020, awful tough to correct it now. The good thing is, you see it a lot more in bridge steel, like abutment steel, wing walls, where roads are getting salted, and that salt can get in there, and that will oxidize, corrode, cause rebar to expand really fast. Way up on the hill like that, not a lot of salt. You can see some sections if you review the tank video footage where it almost looks like they had some leftover ties, like the reinforcing pieces to hold the formwork together, which are typically steel. They didn't have those. Usually they'll kind of snap them off and rub them out. You could see kind of pockets of rust build up around those ties, but it will get into the concrete. I mean, it's not uncommon to have uncoated steel in a tank like this. Epoxy coated while you're doing it doesn't add that much to a project. Probably would have been nice to do it in hindsight, but again, here we are.
And second question, you alluded to this when you first started. What would a fix for this be? What would be involved?
I would imagine, obviously you can't drain the tank. It's the only source of water or storage for the town. It's not a 2-cell tank. I think that was originally designed and got cost edited out. So if you had a 2-cell tank, again, hindsight being 2020, you can drain one side, get in there in the dry, fix it, refill that side, fix the other side. With a single cell tank, it'd be a diver, and they make some, again, this is starting to get out, quite a bit out of my expertise, but there are some injectable, like epoxy resin crack injection products that you can get in there and kind of inject to kind of seal that water from leaking out and help bond that concrete back together. I mean, the cracks will be there forever at this point, but trying to get them injected to seal them, so you don't have that constant seepage, is probably what they would recommend. But again, it's kind of a specialty niche market that's a bit out of my knowledge base and expertise. But I would think divers and crack injection.
Bart?
So Tyler, I'm intrigued by something you said, that the design essentially, if I understood it correctly, is antiquated, like common 60s, 70s, 80s, but not 10 or 15 years ago when this one was built?
Again, I'm not a tank expert, but you don't see a lot of this. I don't see a lot of this style tank around. You see a fair amount of systems have them, but they're usually older. Most people seem to trend toward more of a a precast tank system. The old company was Nat Gun, now they're DN Tanks, where it's a precast system. So the precast panels get tipped up, they get wrapped. Like Heinsberg has a precast system that was put in, boy, I don't know, Steve would probably know, but I think it was the 90s, late 90s.
Yeah.
And that's more common what you see in, Ludlow was mid 2000s. A lot of them now, you don't see that cast in place style for a tank this size particularly often. I mean, in my mind, the geotech side of this was a bit more nerve wracking, I guess, than anything else to me. Again, from more of a general civil engineer standpoint, where that hillside's way up there and there was quite a bit of cut and fill. And then you're putting a cast in place tank with, 800,000 gallons of water, which obviously weighs a lot. Settlement on concrete, it doesn't take much to do some cracking. Even a 1/4 inch of settlement, boom, you get cracks right away. The good thing is, and again, I'm not a geotech specialist, but most settlement, happens in the first year, 2 year, 5 year. And the settlement really, you kind of get depreciating values, after that weight's been sitting on that hillside for 10 years or 15 years. But the geotech side of it kind of is also a little, it's up there. It's up perched on a hill on a really, really steep hillside.
So a follow-up question, this is one where, a group like this of water sewer commissioners sort of contracts with consulting engineers and they tell us what to build and then it goes out to bid. And as we look at it now and listen to you now, it seems almost like, was this the wrong design for that location or for our needs?
I don't know. I mean, like a lot of engineers, people have different preferences for different style things. I wouldn't go as far as saying it was the wrong design for the wrong location. That being said, and trying not to be a Monday morning quarterback, I'm not sure I would have taken the same approach, but I don't know enough to know that Green Mountain may have been, it was the wrong design. I think I would be a consultant who does there's consultants that do tanks every year, a dozen tanks, 10 tanks in Vermont. I would reach out to someone who's done a lot more tanks, a lot more different styles of tanks in different locations versus me, who's, again, I'm a general engineer. I'm in town. I drive by it all the time. So when Josh said, look at it, I said, sure, but with a caveat that, I'm not an expert at it. So I'm just giving you my 2 cents, not an expert opinion, I guess. So I don't know that it's fair to say yet there was the wrong design in the wrong location. I think it's probably too early to tell, and it wouldn't be fair for me to say that at this point, having taken a 1 hour look at some video and scrambled up to the tank a couple times.
Thank you.
Tyler, you mentioned possible repair to the cracks doing epoxy injections. Wouldn't they have the same issues as the expansion and contraction at a different rate than the concrete? And
potentially, again, I don't know enough about the kind of underwater crack injection. Usually they're a bit more flexible than, more of a rigid concrete. So it will kind of flex. I mean, think of it as like glorified caulking, it's going to seal the gap. It'll have some flex to it. They have to be NSF approved because it's a potable water tank. So, it's a pretty specialty product that's designed for that. So I don't, if you sealed all the cracks tomorrow, I don't know that it's like a permanent 100-year fix kind of thing. You're gonna fix the cracks now. You may have the same cracks grow over time, or you may have new cracks pop up over time that you might have to refix. It's kind of impossible to tell at this point, and I don't know. I know those crack injection, kind of epoxy or urethane fixes are out there. I wouldn't even know where to start digging into which one is the right application for your tank in this climate. That would be, again, more of a specialty consultant to know, who has experience doing these kind of crack fix projects to kind of point you in the right direction.
David?
Tyler, we did do an epoxy injection to try to mitigate this a few years ago. I'm not
Oh.
sure if that worked and these are new cracks or if those are leaking again.
I didn't know you guys did crack injection before. I'd be kind of curious to see who did it, how, what product was picked and all that stuff. And I'm sure the consultant who you guys hopefully bring on board to kind of take a deeper dive into this, that'd be some good historical knowledge or good
Yeah, I
piece of
didn't-
history of.
I haven't found any documentation for that.
All right.
Do you know when it was done, Dave?
I can find out.
Yeah, we can catch up. I didn't know that either, so.
It's
figure it
probably
out.
word searching some of the materials, yeah.
Yeah, and if you
Yeah.
get a general idea of the time. frame.
I didn't find any POs where it was paid out or.
It was under warranty.
Oh, okay.
Well, maybe we can still find something in the
Alright.
minutes.
David, it was done under a 1 year. It was cracking after 1 year. So I mean, usually a tank warranty is 1 year of workmanship. So SD Ireland was it SD Ireland that cast
It
it?
was SG Ireland. We were concerned about the cracks and there were some frank, sometimes terse conversations where we were told it is what it is. And we pushed back pretty hard and they reluctantly, this is going on my memory, but reluctantly did the epoxy injection and that was supposed to fix it, but we noticed.
Interesting.
Wept.
So I think what they did was they injected from the outside
Could be.
and then they covered the whole tank with that layer of parge that's on there.
I think that's right.
And I believe that's what you're saying. I don't think they did anything on the interior of it.
That could be.
That's
And
what.
that porridge is not a sealant. That's more, I don't
No.
want to call it window dressing, but it doesn't do anything to seal the tank. It's basically like thorough seal for your house foundation. It's not a, I don't think the intent of that was probably to water seal it and stop the leakage. It was more just to kind of probably dress it up. And I think those cracks kind of push, I mean, it's bubbled up, so you can kind of push on that right now. And there's
You
kind
can
of
flake
pockets
that
of
off
water. Yeah, you can peel it off with your finger. It's really shallow, and there are pockets of water now trapped between that kind of parge or thorough seal they did and the actual original cast in place wall. That's the actual structural part. So, yeah, that makes sense.
So, when one thinks where possible errors could have occurred, it could have been in engineering and design, or it could have been in construction, or it could have been a combination of the two in theory. If you have something that fails, if your house falls down, is it because your house was poorly designed, or was it because it was poorly constructed, or both?
Or were there any stresses on it that would not have been expected? The question I've got, if you look at some of the great construction disasters, bridges collapsing and so forth, and I'm not an engineer, they did piecemeal bandaging, but they didn't arrest the overall decay of the bridge, and then boom, it goes down. And my question is, are we at the point where if we don't do something fairly maybe heroic, something above and beyond just bandaging, are we looking at possibly a day where we get up in the morning and there's a crack all the way down the wall and all the water's come out? I mean, could it accelerate like that where a crack that was this big suddenly becomes this
I
big?
mean, in my feeling, we have to get a structural engineer to assess a real structural engineer. And I think Tyler agrees with that.
Yeah, nothing against Tyler. I just,
No.
Yeah, no, it's a specialty kind of structural engineering, and they would. I mean, I think it's the combination of the specialty structural engineer that does tanks with some geotech, assistance on the side, because it's really, you can have the best structure in the world. If it's sitting on soil that's moving around, it doesn't matter. It's a two-part thing. I think the structural would be the lead. Again, it needs to be a structural who there's lots of different structural types of engineers, buildings, tunnels, whatever. There are structural engineers out there who do a lot of cast in place tanks and this type of structure. So I think it needs to be someone who has done many of these and has troubleshot over the years. It's not, it's not just I don't call him a run of the mill structural engineer, but it needs to be someone who's got experience with tank building on hillsides. Really, it's a pretty niche field.
I have a question. Real quick, and it sounds like if we go with filling these cracks with epoxy or whatever, that we should also have in place a 5-year program, right? Of preventive maintenance, but getting back to the cracks in concrete, I mean, concrete naturally cracks to a degree. And the reason that we have rebar in that is to slow the cracks down and give it structural support. So, and these cracks are all vertical?
Not necessarily vertical, I guess. It seems like they're mostly popping up on points that see the most stress. Corners see a tremendous amount of stress. And a lot of times these cracks will try to kind of propagate almost at like a 45. They'll kind of diagonal themselves up, hit a seam or rebar or whatever, and then kind of go vertical. There's quite a bit of cracking on the roof too, the ceiling. There was surprising to me. I guess I was expecting to see more cracks on the floors that would mimic the ceiling because there are two parallel planes. But and I agree. One of the first things the superintendent told me, who'd been out there forever, is all concrete cracks, which it does, but to a point. And this does feel, again, kind of just a gut level. It feels more, it's less hairline cracks than aesthetics. A lot of them are full depth, a bit wider than you'd expect and a bit more widespread than I would expect.
Okay.
So I agree. All concrete cracks. I wouldn't expect to go up there and see a tank that is crack free that's 10 or 15 years old. It is a little surprising that they're as many and as big at this point. I think they could probably be way worse. It could be that, 2-inch gap there where water's spilling out of the side, but water is leaving the tank at, a faster rate than it probably should be at this point.
Okay. Steve.
So, the tanks at the water treatment plant that we have, they're not as large. They were built on a flat level surface. I have a structural engineer coming this week to inspect them. And I have asked him to have a discussion about the water tank and if we can proceed with having him look at some of the video and assess maybe what's going on up there. If it's Holt Tanner's structural engineer, they're doing the upgrade. So I've reached out to them and asked them if they would be willing to look at the the video and give us a little more
Second opinion.
on that.
And they're a very big outfit. They've got, offices, I think at least all over the Northeast, if not mid-Atlantic. I think that's a good idea.
So that's where that was where I've started. I've also reached out to the dive company that installed the mixer and did the cleaning and did the videos to ask them if because one of the things that they say they offer is crack maintenance, to see what that involves and how pricey it is and where to go. So those are the two things that we're doing on our end to proceed with this problem.
David.
Is the roof, the ceiling, the top of the tank dipping down, sagging at all, or is it just cracked?
I didn't survey it or put a straight edge across it. It looks like it's not sagging. It's kind of more cracked.
I've been up there several times, spring, summer, I do not see puddles of water pooling up there. Most generally it is all shed off. But I'm not up there every time it rains, but when I've been up there have not been puddles. There is no obvious, with the naked eye, there is no obvious sags in it.
Well, that's something.
Jay.
I'm looking back to the memo. I know you've got a structural engineer coming already, and they hopefully can look.
Well, I've asked them to take a look and
Right,
see,
they're not
to
committing-
direct me where to go.
Right. And the memo, it mentions that our attorney, Joe McLean, has reached out to several Vermont engineers to discuss the project. and has not so far found a firm that's willing to take on the project, he may need to look out of state for a firm. So can you expand on that a little bit? Is it because Green Mountain is defunct that we need somebody to take it over, or
Well,
why is
so-
our attorney involved?
So that he became involved when we had a meeting with our attorneys as well as Vermont League of Cities and Towns on what are the next steps we can do legally. So they wanted to have the structural engineer take a look at the existing, or an engineer that specializes in tanks, take a look at the existing conditions, take a look at the plans that were drawn up to see, does that match what was drawn up in the plans, and sort of do a forensic on this. And they haven't really found a Vermont firm that's willing to take on that job. I think some of it has to do with policing another Vermont firm, even though they're out of business. So our attorney's trying to reach a little bit out of state to see if there's somebody else that might be willing to take.
And I will say, I'm looking at it just by asking the engineer to tell me what the issues are, what we can do to correct them,
Mhm.
and how to proceed from that end. Nothing on the
Yeah,
legal.
so I think that's a different approach. It probably gets a better or an answer.
Yeah, I mean,
more
I'm
quickly
not
than
saying
yes.
that we don't need to proceed that way. I'm just trying to find an answer to what's the problem and what can we do
And I
to,
think that information will be helpful to our
Yeah.
attorneys in VLCT to understand what's the scope of the problem as well.
yeah.
Bart?
So I think that is sort of, we can't really get past this until we know more, is
Yeah.
that fundamentally, structurally unsound, like a risk to its structural integrity over time? And or is it leakage, where it's modest, like a crack in the drywall, you fill it, but if the foundation is sagging, it's gonna keep going.
Yeah,
And it frankly is of concern to me to hear of cracks in the roof or the top, because that suggests that there is some other set of problems. That's obviously not due to the pressure of the water in the tank pushing against the roof, right?
well, my understanding is that I mean, I think originally they designed the tank to be 2 chambers.
Mhm.
And then they opted to go with the pillars.
Mhm.
It's not uncommon, like Tyler said, you see that design the 60s, 70s, and but you don't often see it today. And I'm not sure that the support, a more solid support in the center might have been, and then essentially you have 2 cells.
Mhm.
And you're not. But
Do we want to continue on or over?
Yeah.
That is,
So it sounds like but we don't need a motion to contract for Wayton or to.
well, I mean, I'm just asking them if it's something that they can look at. Because I've got the structural engineer to do some assessment on the 20-year upgrade at the water plant, wastewater plant. And I'm gonna ask him, and I mentioned to him that I would like him to look at some video, and he said we could have the discussion when he comes out Thursday.
We will bring this up, put it on the next agenda.
Sure.
Okay, all right, thank you, Tyler.
Yep, thank you guys.
All right, consideration of approval of funds for contractor relocate fire hydrant in front of the fire department. Josh or Steve?
Steve, you wanna?
So the fire hydrant, and we have 3 water valves that need to be located in a different spot, or they're gonna be under about 5 feet of fill. This wasn't included in the Route 2 upgrade. This has to do with the bridge construction. And so I reached out to ECI, who is doing the bridge construction and all of the road work right there, to see what they would charge to raise the fire hydrant and actually move it up to the edge of the parking lot. They're gonna put 2 pillars on each side of it to protect it from being hit. And to raise the water valves so that we can have access to them. That was about $18,000.
18,200.
I gave,
the quote.
yeah,
Yep.
and, we have, I think we said 15 in our, what we used to use for water breaks. That we could possibly use to cover some of that cost. We didn't get a second opinion on this. I find it hard to believe that somebody can bring their equipment in when ECI already has their equipment there, but I mean,
David?
I just have to ask,
yep.
why are 400 water sewer users paying to move the town's fire hydrant and plumbing because the state's moving the road?
Well, the water and sewer users are paying to move all of the water and sewer structures that are affected by the Route 2 paving. So whether it's a valve or a manhole, we had a contract that was approved by the commission before the project started
Yeah.
for all of those structures to be moved. And I think the basic idea is the water and sewer department owns those structures with sort of a right of way. But as the state comes in and makes improvements, it's not on the state to make our structures compliant with their new improvements. It's on the town and
So I have an answer and then another.
Bard?
Well, this is one of the reasons that we charge a fire protection fee to the
Exactly.
town. So this system supports water and fire protection, and then there's a fee charged to all the town because
I'm going.
of the cost.
Yeah.
And so we could, I think it is ours, but the question, it might call the question is, of are we charging the right fee? Should we charge more of the town
Yeah,
for that? So that might be a separate
Like
conversation.
select board question.
yeah.
And then I'd say, well, I think it's really us, because we set the fee for, the select board is kind of a customer. The town is a customer of the
Right.
Water Sewer Commission. We do fire protection, this is what it's gonna cost you.
Okay.
And then well, because in theory, the Water Sewer Commission could say, if you don't pay the fee, you can't use the fire hydrants. I mean, like, not to be too extreme, but that's kind of the deal, like,
Yeah.
unless the town wants to take over the Water Sewer Commission and the infrastructure. That's why they're two kind of separate boards and
Mhm. Okay.
budgets, et cetera. So I think it's not unfriendly, or it is friendly. It's just then I think we should do it. And what is call the question of, are we still charging the right rate for fire protection overall?
Yeah.
And then the other thing I'll ask is really a procedural question about procurement. So this is a sole source, and are we comfortable doing a sole source to this point?
And that's why we brought it to you guys. I mean, you can tell me, go out and find.
So there's no precedence established about having to get 1, 2, 3, 5 bids. to
Well, there
do it.
is.
well, yeah, typically it would be something you'd have to bid out, but like when we did the agreement with the company before the project started, we agreed that, okay, whatever it takes to raise those, there was an estimate on that the contractor that's doing the work is gonna do that work, and it was like, I forget, $20,000-$30,000, something along those lines, so it was over the 15,000 that we would normally go out to bid on. But I tend to agree with Steve on this. We're not gonna find a contractor. They have all the stuff here. They have all the equipment here. It's a simple add-on.
They're 20 feet away.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna, so I'm comfortable in this source saying, I think this is gonna be our best bet.
There
and-
should be a mob demob fee for anybody else to come.
Yeah. Probably higher
and-
rates.
And for David's question about, if we have a fire hydrant that fails, like we had the one up in front of the town garage fail, we as the system replaces it. I mean, we don't charge, we don't say the fire department has to replace it, we replace it. And essentially, this is a hydrant that will not be usable if we don't move it.
Yeah,
So,
hard
I
to get
think
through the
that-
4 feet of dirt.
yeah,
I'm looking at there's a good point about the fire protection fee. I mean, what is that? That's the gap loan plus a percentage of the water tank loan. Plus, I think
Yeah.
it's 5% of the overall water budget, and it's probably structured that way for items like this for
Yeah.
care and maintenance of the
Yeah.
facility or infrastructure.
I mean, the hydrant by itself is one thing, but the 3 valves, we need to raise those up. I mean, that's just.
Yeah.
Needs to be done.
Anybody wanna, more discussion? Anybody would like to,
I mean,
Let's
I have
have a motion.
no problem going and trying to find, more contractors if you want. I don't have a problem with doing that.
No, I
getting
mean,
it bid. I really. I can't see how somebody's gonna come in and do it any cheaper.
I think furthermore, why would I even bid on that? When, if I know the site, I'm gonna look and say, why would I even take the time to put together a bid?
And just to get back to Bart's question, looking at the FY 25 budget, the 5% of the total water budget is $19,935, and that's in the $50,000 fire protection fee. So we're charging a good amount already, or close to the same amount. I mean, there's other things that go into that as far as water usage, but it's relatively.
Okay. Discussion, further discussion, question? Would anybody like to put forth a motion?
This is Bard. I move to approve, ECI to relocate the fire hydrant in front of the Richmond Fire Department at a cost not to exceed $18,200 to be paid for from the water line budget
Line.
line.
This is David, I'll second.
Tongue tighter there,
I
right?
had to think
second-
of a better way to
second.
phrase that, but I couldn't.
I know.
It's line twice.
You're over here giggling at watching somebody say it. Further discussion? Okay, further discussion, calling for a vote to approve the motion. Bard just put forth.
J.I.
Bard, I.
David, I.
Morgan, I.
And Aaron is. here.
Aaron, I,
All right, thank you, Aaron.
Aaron, I,
Okay, well, it
She's
says
in a tractor.
It says iPhone.
Yeah, she's.
Yeah, how did you know iPhone was Aaron?
So there was a chat.
Well,
on there.
she came up and
Oh.
it did say that she was,
Oh, of course. My bad, Aaron, I'm sorry.
Telepathy.
it's okay, I didn't want to get a demerit for not attending.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Okay, motion passes. Okay. Next, review of water data for May 2024. It doesn't sound like there's a whole lot to review.
That's another
Ding,
perfect
ding,
month.
ding, ding, ding. doing?
yeah, we've pretty much hit stride on being able to maintain our water right now.
No yellow.
And June is right on track, same way. So, we figured it out how to do it, and
Well,
if we don't break it, it will stay the same.
no, that's good, really.
Yeah.
Cavities are down.
Well,
Numbers
the
are good.
fluoride is up, and so we're really happy. It really is, what we're doing is working, obviously, and the amount of time that we have to spend doing it is down. So it, you know, it's about a 45-minute a day job.
But when the new monitoring system is in, it'll compile this automatically.
No, we,
Just hoping.
yeah. We opted for just the basic
Okay,
that we could build on in the future as we can afford.
okay.
Um,
So the software could do it, and if we choose to, there'd be a fee.
right, yep.
Great. Well, again,
But-
congratulations to the.
No, I mean, we figured it out. It's not rocket science to us now.
Well, it does take, you gotta think about what you're doing and understand it, so, but anyway, congratulations to you and Brad.
Yep.
and everybody else, so. Thank you. Superintendent's report, Steve?
So, Brad will be starting back tomorrow. I have his doctor's note saying he is able to return with no restrictions. I'm not gonna ask him to lift 100 pounds and walk around with it, but, yeah.
You'll call David for that.
You know, at least he's back. He's ready to go. Had the conversation with him tonight. He has done all of our state reports for us while he's been sick, so, you know, that's one thing I didn't have to worry about. I haven't interviewed. I have had a couple of people come down and take tours of the plant that have now want interviews. They didn't shy away.
And do they,
Neither one of them have One of them has some mechanical experience. The other has none. But they both, I think, are very motivated to learn. But I have, I think, 11 more to read through, and so I'm in the process of trying to find somebody to bring along. I just want to make sure he fits with, or he or she fits with the program, and the people we're.
And there's no certifications required just to work there when there's a certified operator supervising.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
The main driver is somebody with good mechanical aptitude.
Well, I mean, to me, yes. Especially we starting tomorrow, we'll be starting with our water meter. The Zener rep from Texas is here to start installing the readers, the main readers. And then as soon as he's done with that, then we'll get some technical assistance on how to install the meters the way they want it. And then we'll be full bore meter installation people from then on for a while. But along with that, everything else still has to be run and kept running. The wastewater plant has had a few snafus. We've been working through them. The press had a few issues with the air compressor. We were able to take Mike and I were able to take the two non-working compressors, make one, and we have it functioning really well now. And pressing. We've been averaging 50,000 gallons of septage a day. We took 75,000 today.
And we've not had any repeats of last month where we took a load of bad septage in it.
No, that was actually in April.
Okay.
But no, I laid down the law pretty hard. Most of the septage companies are telling me when they have something other than just plain septage that they want to bring. P&P, they have called and said, we have 2,000 gallons of tomatoes. Can we bring it down? And I'm like, nope, I don't want them. Take them somewhere else.
That would throw the pH way off.
Well, that would throw solids and everything off.
Okay.
Last time they did that without telling us, was just after Kendall left, and it plugged our septage machine. To the point where we had to, literally shut it off and dig it out. So it looked like salsa coming out of the machine, into the dumpster. But we have other companies that have asked to bring, portalette waste because Essex has been down. And what I've asked them to do is we'll take 1,000 gallons mixed with 3,000 gallons of septage. That seems to work. It doesn't seem to show any bad signs when we do that. It's essentially solution by dilution, and thinning it out. So that's what we're working through. And, I tell them if I see anything that I don't want, I will shut you off.
That's fair.
The other thing is that I had mentioned, we have the aeration tank, the old fish tank. It is now drained. It is now cleaned again. And Holt Tanner and their structural engineer, as part of the 20-year upgrade, is coming to assess it to see if there's cracks, damage, or anything for the 20-year, longer than that, since 72 when it was built. To assess it. When they're there, they're going to also do the empty clarifier. And then as we progress, they'll come back and check the other tanks as we empty them so they can come in.
Which one is the clarifier?
The clarifier is the last one with the chain running in it. We have one of those that's down it's broken and we're getting parts and stuff. And then we drained and cleaned out the aeration tank that we had filled for winter, because you don't like to leave them empty.
Mhm.
And that one, and I called them up and I was like, would you guys like to look at these tanks before we fill them up? And they're like, oh my God, that's the great idea. Let's do it. So.
Good.
I said, that's why we called you. So. The other thing that we have had lately is a multitude of people wanting to fill their swimming pools.
Hmm.
And wanting a break off of their sewer bill.
Oh, yeah.
And the discussion that Josh and I had was that we don't do that. Because it's a slippery slope. How do you just say no to somebody that says they're just watering their garden, or they're just watering their lawn, or washing their car, or having a car wash, or so I would bring that to you guys, because the water board has the final say.
We don't have a policy on it, and we've
Yeah.
had folks with leaks that we have said no to. We don't really have a mechanism for backing out the sewer charges.
Well, we do have a mechanism to sell them water to put
Yes.
in a truck to truck it over. And
Yes.
fill it up.
No,
So,
and
yeah.
I mentioned that. I mentioned that I had another one today. And they get very irate.
I'm sorry, so David, did you have a question?
No, I was waving to Pete.
Oh,
Oh, and I thought you had a question too.
Well, is top dogs, don't they haul water, the water haulers or whatever? Steve?
No, there's Wright Family Farm, there's freshwater haulers.
Okay.
There's several companies around.
Can you
Um,
refer them to those people?
Yeah, and then that's what I do. But they're like, oh, they get very irate. They're like, why can't we just, and I'm like, one, the policy isn't there. And two, I mean, one customer wanted us to read the meter on Friday, read it Monday morning, and not charge them sewer allotment for the whole weekend. And I'm like, now that means you're not gonna be home all weekend, right? And everything's shut off. Well, no, of course we're gonna be home. And I'm like, well,
I think we make this, talk about a policy.
It seems to me we have a policy.
I think so.
We're not big, this is, as somebody mentioned, is a slippery slope. And I think the solution is you can get a truckload of water, which won't impact either your water or sewer rates, and the cost of the water is relatively low.
Well, I mean, we charge $25 1,000.
Okay, so we just put that to bed. Great.
I think.
Okay.
I think so, unless I guess some of those people show up and want to table it.
And
again.
I do tell them, come to the meeting, voice your opinions, talk to the board. If you want change, that's how it happens. I said, I am just enforcing what policies we have. And
I would be curious what other municipalities do. I mean, we're not the only community that's come across this.
I have no idea.
I think it's low on our priority list
Yeah.
though to figure out.
Yeah.
As far as.
I mean,
Other
I have had
pressing-
3 in the last 2 weeks.
Hmm.
But they get very irate and
But really, I think at the end of the day, as board just pointed out about present policy is it's still pretty inexpensive for them to.
It's a path, and I think if we started doing this, it would become fairly labor intensive on our staff to
Right.
run around and figure it out, and like slippery slope too, I think. Oh, it's my garden, it's my car wash, it's gonna get, anyway, I'm happy being done with it, you guys are.
Okay, moving right along. Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
Gateway expansion project. The CCRPC and NBRC.
Well, so CCRPC, I guess got an update from NBRC about our grant, and I think 3 others that hadn't really been moving along, and Bard provided a detailed response to CCRPC about the history of our project and where we're at and where we haven't been. So I think that got, I don't know that there's not much that CCRPC can do to help. They were looking for, how can we help move these projects along? I think we kind of are where we are. Immediately, it has sort of stalled on my desk a bit. I know Steve and I talked about a next step is to kind of clean up the easement work over at the school.
Right.
I think we've got some of the plans. You were going to try to find some others. We'll try to
Yeah.
get that moving back again. But admittedly, we haven't spent a lot of time on it in the last couple months.
I'll just observe, from a CCRPC, the Regional Planning Commission perspective that's dealing with projects throughout the county, Burlington, South Burlington, Colchester, Winooski. They might be inclined to say, what's the big deal? It's only a couple of $1 million. Which for those towns and cities is probably a manageable scale, but for us,
It's a major.
it's not a manageable scale, or
very
it's
major,
much
yeah.
more difficult scale to manage. Who wants to pay
Big
$1
burden.
million?
Anyway, okay, well, so we'll just leave it until we can focus on the right of way and getting that easement.
Yeah, I think we need to
I
work on
mean,
the easement and then
the dis-
reconnect with the school about the condition of the sewer line and are they willing or interested in getting it turned over to the town? And if so, here's the steps they have to follow.
The
But they haven't
discussion-
shown a great sense of urgency to try to make that happen.
The discussion was we need to keep progressing with this, and the first hurdle that I can see that we can finish is the water line easement. I mean, the water line essentially has been done. It's in there. We need to make it officially ours and have the easement with the school. Once that's done, then we take the next step and just keep chewing away at it.
Figure out the existing wastewater line and how
Yeah.
to come up with something, whether we want to move forward or not. So, no, I agree. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
I do have a question on that, because my understanding, the water line is fine, but the wastewater line is not fine. So I just want to clarify that the town wouldn't be taking on a bad line. The school would be taking that on.
So there's two parts to that. One, the water line, we actually don't have an easement with the
Oh,
school.
I'm fully aware.
Right, okay, so they're working on the easement part. We'll do
The
that.
engineer. Mhm.
Right, well, for us to have legal, covered legally. The second with the wastewaters, yes, we have to get back. There is I guess a disagreement on whether it's a bad line or not. So, and even though it's been surveyed, no. So that has to be cleared up, and then also, just like Josh was pointing out, does the school actually want to give up the rights of that line to the town?
Well, I think it's more, do they want to put the effort in to prove to us that
Right.
it's of a condition that we want to take it over?
Right.
No, like, because they've tried a few things, hasn't been satisfactory,
Mm.
so.
Right, so, you're right, does the school want to do, is it worth it to them or not? So. Okay. Moving right along, last on the list here is the, well, no, not last on the list, second last discussion of dewatering location.
And I don't know if we have enough.
Well, that was just something I threw out last week that the state threw out at a meeting I was in. They did a rather large and engineering assessment of the septage and how it's dealt with throughout the whole state. And they have this modeling program that they put in place where they could essentially add or subtract facilities to see how it would react to the state as a whole and where septage was treated and how it was treated and what it was done. And one of the models that they showed a facility in Richmond run by a vendor, but dumping into our system, essentially what happens to our stuff now. And they showed it out by the interstate in that general direction. I raised my hand and said, hey, Ed, this is all well and good, but do you know there's not a sewer line out there? And they're like, oh, well, why not? Well, I said about 15 years worth of why nots, but, yeah, and that got me thinking on, well, why if they, and one of the things that they were talking about was getting the truck traffic off of, Esplanade and out of the center of town and keeping the trucks out of here. And giving the wastewater facility more space, because essentially we wouldn't have a dewatering building. And it essentially would mean that we would have, whatever facility was built there would have to accommodate our waste. Which essentially would mean I think we could do it with 1, maybe 2 truckloads a week from the facility out. And then that got me to thinking, well, then we lose a bunch of revenue. So I was thinking in the greater plan, we should start to think about if they would really like something like that to do, we should get more involved in the planning of it and be the operators of it. That would give us the revenue and maybe give us the ability to tell them where we think it should be located.
Are they interested in paying to extend a line?
Well, see, that is what the discussion should start out
I
as,
think so.
you know, where
That's
as a community, we should maybe start to think of where we could locate a facility that could treat septage. And essentially it would be, in my eyes, essentially just what we're doing now.
Hey, let's wrap this up.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
We could
we're out of
probably-
time, but
We can add it to next agenda if you want.
Yeah,
for
let's
more
do that. And we'll-
conversation.
do you want to hit the update on Congressional?
Yeah, that'll take 2 seconds. So, Senator Welsh passed this on to the first step to approve it. So it still has many steps to go, but it's at least come out of his office. And then today I got notice that Senator Sanders also passed the spending request from his office on. So 2 senators have recommended it for approval. And now it goes into the larger process, but I think that's good news for us that we have 2 senators moving it forward.
$2.5 million.
It could be.
And so that's, I think, the detail for the public is when we say it,
Oh,
$2.5
sorry.
million.
Yeah, congressional spending request for funding for the upgrades to the septic receiving and processing facility. Just to, sorry, I skipped over that part. Thank you.
It's a long process, but we're so long with it.
Yeah, we are, but I think it's encouraging.
It's very encouraging. All right,
Okay.
so next agenda item,
There's a few.
dewatering location continued.
Sure.
Tank. That's what you know.
I have one more that I'd like to add for next week. The fire, department has a truck that's available.
Oh,
And I think that, I think we should buy it for the water department.
let's add that on.
Uh-huh.
We'll have that
Yeah.
on. Yep.
All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Vote?
Jay, aye. Bart, aye.
David, I.
Aaron?
Aaron, I.
Good night. All right. We are adjourned.
Aaron,
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep.